Gather yourself together with Fringes. Fringes is a new social networking app for the community. Are you looking to study, teach, cook, play, sew, and travel? Perhaps you're new to the area and are tired of spending Sabbaths alone? Are you looking for a place to post your events, products, and services? Rejoice! Fringes is here. Download free today. Available on Google Play and the App Store.
Peace and greetings to you. This is Emunah Yisrael, affectionately known as the First Lady of Debate Talk for you. I have enjoyed coming to you week after week, season after season, growing together, speaking about the difficult topics, investing the energy, time, and effort with our brothers and sisters on the panel. Today, I would like to come to you with an opportunity for you to invest in something that I've been working on and that's near and dear to me. It's called the Yummy Cottage. You can learn more about it at www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. We're currently fundraising so that we can get it off the ground, and your help would be appreciated. Once again, www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. Check the link in the box and hope to hear from you soon.
HebrewWay.com, high quality custom Israelite apparel store. The place to find scripture-based attire for men, women, and children of all ages. We have a wide range of t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, caps, beanies, and bags, available in a full range of sizes. Also, the ideal place to find Israelite gifts for family and friends. HebrewWay.com is geared toward awakening men and women and especially the youth worldwide. Try our uniquely crafted collection with free shipping on eligible items. Help spread the word of the Most High. Visit us at HebrewWay.com. That's HebrewWay.com. Shalom.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Shalom, shalom, Lalato family. This is the voice of Mayana Hasso-Ferret. I will be temporarily hosting and taking your calls. This is the season finale of the Relationship Challenge, and we are going to be looking at the newly re-emerging concept of libations in modernity. We have our brother Ron Divine Prospect providing a lot of background information about pre-exilic customs, and among them is the idea of offering up wine and cake libations unto the Most High as one of the rituals that our ancestors participated in. So we're going to look at whether or not that is something that we should reintroduce into our modern contemporary concept of being Yisrael in 2018. So before we go into anything else, we would like to bring you guys into the conversation and hear your thoughts. So if you're out there, we can see you. Go ahead and press 1. If you're listening over on Blog Talk or trying to tune in to us on the YouTube channel, you can call 319-527-6239 and press 1, because this part of the show is all about you. So press 1, call in, let me know what your thoughts are about the libation rituals, this pre-exilic concept of offering up wine or oil and cake to the Most High. Do you think that sounds like a custom that we should be reinstituting? Does it sound a little too foreign to you? Then maybe that isn't something we need to do. And so the question tonight is, are all rituals righteous? A look at modern-day libation. Our host, of course, is Emunah Yisrael. I am Mayana Hasso-Ferret, your friendly neighborhood home panel, and we are expecting Ron Divine Prospect to be joining us. He's already confirmed our invitation, so he may just be running a little bit late. In the meantime, we're looking for you to call in and give us your opinion about, are all rituals righteous? Should we be reinstituting this wine libations, oil sacrifices, or is it just a little too weird? I think we already have a caller, which is great. So I'll go ahead and open up their phone line.
Shalom, Queen. How you doing?
Shalom, to whom I speak.
This is Marietta Yahoo.
How are you? What are your thoughts about? Welcome to the conversation. What are your thoughts about libation? Ron is. Have you gotten first? Did you get a chance to see any of his videos or presentations on the matter?
Yes, I actually follow Ron Prospect a lot as far as with his philosophies and stuff. So I'm very familiar. I've actually met him in person quite a few times, and we've talked, got to build quite a few times.
Okay.
So I'm real good with him. I was hoping he would be on this, so he'll know who I am. He knows exactly who I am. But like his philosophies on like pre-exilic Israel trying to keep those customs. I'm really fond of that as far as like trying to get back to the actual as far back as where the judges was around. Instead of there being actually like a king or whatsoever, but there being judges or whatsoever. So I'm very familiar with that. I believe that we should get back to that. That kind of is the pre-exilic state was kind of before like a lot of Babylonian stuff came into play. A lot of things that we supposedly believe now wasn't taught back before we went into captivity during the Babylonian captivity. So I'm on the verge right now of actually doing a lot of studying to actually figure out, how was Torah kept back then in the days of like, Samson and Samson and Deborah and David's era and stuff like that. So it's, and during the Solomon Temple and stuff. So I'm very interested in this conversation as well.
Well, what are your thoughts about that? You brought up judges, and that's a very interesting time in our history. In fact, we do know quite a bit about what they were doing during that period. Almost as a refrain, we're told that everybody did what was righteous in their own sight. Is that what we want to go back to?
No. I believe that a lot of people do. I mean, even nowadays, I can see that people are still doing a lot of things that they want to do, or they want to add into Torah, or they want to add on to Torah. I know there's a lot of strife going on as far as like what is the different Talmud or teachings that are going around this day and age. Where I believe that me personally, I believe that Torah is a lot more simpler than what people are making it out to be right now. A lot of stuff has been added because, trying to fit to the customs that people are living in during like their society or something, to kind of fit in to that society. I do know, like when after we came back into the land, a lot of Hellenistic views came into play. I know some people they'll take, and I'm probably one of them. They'll take like the belief in a physical resurrection or whatsoever, but it being more of a spiritual awakening, which is what they would consider the resurrection. Well, which I would consider the resurrection, like awakening of people coming out of like a totally a secular world mindset, trying to incorporate into Torah, where I believe that Torah was actually placed to make us set apart from the nations. So, but since we've been into several different captivities, a lot of our captivities has been, a lot of our captives, customs and statutes have been merged into ours to try to fit along with their society. But I believe that the Most High actually set us apart for certain reasons, for us to stick out a lot more than for us to blend in with society or blend in with certain customs and cultures and stuff. I know it's kind of hard to do that nowadays because of some of the fact that, there's some stuff that that the Most High wants us to do that society will frown upon us. For instance, like sacrificing lambs or goats or something like that. Some people would deem that as being pretty much inhumane, I would say, or where it was something that was pretty much done in honor or in a memorial for the Most High or whatsoever. So, as far as like the rituals or whatsoever, different things that that'll make us seem a little bit more humane to people, which is really not humane if you really think about it. Like I take sacrificing as somewhat of a cookout. People come in, they put stuff on the altar, which we would consider like a grill nowadays, and they'll burn it, they'll eat it, all in memorial of the Most High. Where nowadays, sacrifice is being used as like a way of redemption or a sign, or like we need to do this, and people are getting customs mixed up with, I would say, like the Greeks' way of mindset of what they believe that sacrifice is, or what the Babylonians believe that was sacrifice, and how they used to sacrifice to their gods. We had to separate that from when we came out of Egypt. A lot of stuff that we came. Go ahead.
But you said a lot of really interesting. No, it's okay, because you're saying a lot of really interesting things, and I want to slow you down just to kind of explore them and not do a disservice to a lot of the really great points that you're making. One of the points that you made was that as a returning people, we tend to overcomplicate things, that Torah is very practical and very clear on its intent and its purpose, and sometimes we, as a returning people, complicate the matter. So just in light of tonight's topic, do you think that this idea of libations and these other types of rituals, are these complications to the already simple, already straightforward and direct and very, very practical Torah?
Yes. I believe that, we kind of complicated a lot of things.
Do you believe that libations is one of those complications? Or do you think that libations is one of the practical applications? We're talking about libations this evening, so do you think that the libation resurrection that Divine Prospect is proposing is part of the complication, or is that practical application from your following and research of the man and his work?
Yes, I believe so. I believe it's kind of adding, or it's making things seem a little bit more far-fetched than what it seems, or whatsoever. I believe that it's supposed to bring a certain type of mindset or it's supposed to bring a certain type of, I would say, liberation to the people, as far as like the resurrection or whatsoever. We can experience the resurrection right now, as far as just people waking up right now to Torah. And that right there is giving us life and eternal life, just simply waking up to it, and that's a form of resurrection, according to my.
So, do we need libations? Do you think that this is a practice that he's talking about resurrecting the practice of libation? Is that something you think we need to do, or is that already very simple expectation that supposed to ask for us?
Yes.
Yes, it's complicating it. Yes, it's so you think it's not a good idea, or you think that it is a good idea for us to reinstate libations to the deities, to the Most High?
Yes. I believe so. I mean, because at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that was actually put in place was actually supposed to honor the Most High. Period. Point blank. Nothing else.
Wait, I'm sorry. What were you said about the honoring the Most High? I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. I'm asking you. What was that thought?
I'll say yes. A lot of the actually the majority of the stuff in Torah, I believe, is supposed to be strictly honoring the Most High. Nothing else. Just pretty much nothing else. Like we supposed to be just completely honoring the Most High, not honoring ourselves or not honoring anything else except for the Most High.
Do libation? Does this practice of pouring out wine and oil and the like, is that one of the ways that we honor the Most High? That's this idea of libations. Today we're going to look at the Ron, or Divine Prospect, proposing to the people that libations specifically, is a ritual that is something that we in modernity should practice because it's part of this pre-exilic mindset. Would you agree that we should find high places in trees and the like to pour out libations to the Most High?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question or not, right? But yes, if it's in honor of the Most High, yes. I do believe that a lot of people do have their own ways of praising the Most High. I don't see that there's nothing wrong with how people do praise the Most High, but I don't think that people should actually be force that onto people or do it. If it's done in their household or if that's their way, then let them have their specific way of honoring the Most High. But I believe, like, as far as dealing with the feast days or keeping Shabbat or whatsoever, then yeah, whatever is found in Torah, that's commanded, that's required, we should do. But outside of that, like as far as pouring out wine or anything, like there's no commandment as far as like how to pour. I kind of want to get his perspective on it because this is the first time I've ever hearing about that. So I would like to hear his perspective onto that before I really would agree or disagree with that.
Right. That's why I originally asked you if you had an opportunity to see his work on this topic.
No,
right? Because we've been
following
him in general. You also made
I haven't. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, so you also made
go ahead.
the point about not follow, or that we are now heavily influenced by our post-Babylonian and later still Roman occupation and oppression and captivities, which is all very true and very, very interesting. But would you say that we were also, prior to captivity, we got involved in quite a few things that we had no business getting involved in without being in captivity to the Assyrians, without being into captivity with the Babylonians, without being in captivity to Rome, and without even our most recent memories of captivity? Israel had already fallen into quite a few trappings of sharing culture areas with foreigners. So would you agree that even before captivity, in these pre-exilic spaces, Israel was given to participating in rites and rituals and customs that were not our own?
Yes, I actually believe that. It's even listed in Jeremiah 7:21 when he says, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt, I did not command your forefathers of eating meat and sacrificing. But then, they did, and they went backwards. So I believe that a lot of that stuff even came from our Egyptian captivity, if you want to say. And a lot of and where you were getting at, yes, a lot of that came from just dealing with the Canaanite culture, mixing in with the Canaanite culture. I do know that Dan, Judah, or a lot of them actually end up doing a lot of customs that the ancient Canaanites used to do as well, just to keep up with their, with the matriarch side of the family, because we do know that a lot of them came, that they was pulled from the Canaanite culture or whatsoever. So, I do believe that a lot of our customs, even before the pre-exilic era, or even during the pre-exilic era, did come from a lot of customs that was around during the culture, from the cultures that was around in that area at that time as well.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling in and helping us to kick off the early portion of the show. Our hostess, Emunah Israel, is back in the building, and she is very excited about engaging you and the rest of the callers and the listening audience. So once again, listening audience, if you're on the line and you're already called in to 319-527-6239 and you would like to talk to us and you would like to talk to our special guest when he gets here, be sure you have to press 1 in order for us to bring you into the conversation. So I'm going to take my seat at the table and get out of the host chair and let our sister Emunah take her spot. Sister, you in the building?
I feel like I'm running a marathon. Oh, praise be to the Most High, the Holy One. My computer won't let me be great, y'all. Thank you. So much to Sister Mayana, holding it down, getting the party started. I threw together a presentation that we were trying to go simulcast and being extra and curricular over there on Under the Palm YouTube. So I wanted you, for those who are visual, but my computer won't let me be great. So with that said, you're gonna have to hear me narrate. The slides. But once again, thank you so much, Sister Mayana. Don't go far. Thank you, Marielle, for calling in. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to press 1 as we get into it. This is a little bit different. It's a TRC conversation, but it's one in which, the things that we hear, and we've done stuff like this before, as it relates to should we still have circumcision. I don't know if you remember that one, Sister Mayana. Should the men still circumcise?
I do. The men like anything that has to do with us, but we cannot touch them in their privy places.
Correct. Then that one got like, so if you missed that one, and again, this is the wrap-up show, so you're going to hear me reference some shows that we've done in the past. Hold on for me 1 second. Sorry about that. You're going to hear some references, some shows that we've done in the past, so that during this break you can definitely go ahead over to YouTube, Debate Talk for You, as well as Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak, and you can reference some of these. We did rape doctrine, which this was a doctrine that comes out of, they call it the rape doctrine, the thought that you can lay with underage women at an appointed time, varying, and this comes out of one of the camps, and we addressed that one as well. And so today, again, as Sister Mayana said, this one, for those who do know, we did invite Brother Divine Prospect to the conversation. Hopefully he's able to make it. And this is an interaction that happened between myself and him on his YouTube after I saw this introduction or reintroduction of a pre-exilic thought or ritual of libations.
Oh, sis, wouldn't that rape, at least the rape doctrine or their ideas and imaginations about how a young child can be taken into marriage or claimed through sex, wouldn't that technically be also a pre-exilic thought?
Possibly, yeah, it will fall under, and it's because, if you read Jashar, such was only 13, and, how old did you think Ribka was? So that also does fall under this custom. Also giving, two daughters to one man. That was a custom in certain places. Some people don't really, that was a Sorite marriage that Laban he did trick Yaakov into entering into. And that is pre-exilic. That is some customs and traditions that not only Israel held, because at that time there was no Israel, there was just the progenitors of Israel. That's a custom that they held, as well as the nations round about them. And this is what we're kind of trying to do, is parse out what is the nations, and what is general customs, and what are customs that we were told that we should subscribe to and not subscribe to. So with that said, not everything that we see in the time of the patriarchs should we attempt to reinstitute. And so we're going to we're going to revisit, in particular, drink offerings to see if, as what our brother Divine Prospect is saying, this is something that on a monthly basis we should bring back into our rotation. So I don't know if I should ask Sister Mayana what her thoughts are now or after the presentation. What do you think, Sister Mayana?
I like being mysterious.
We're going to Mayana be mysterious. I'm gonna take a deep breath because I was over here banging on this computer for the last 40 minutes, and so it is what it is.
Yeah, I heard you put together a little impromptu presentation of your own.
Yeah, I was trying to let y'all see it. I might just give out the link or take the audio and then put it back. I don't know. We'll see. But pre-exilic rituals revisited. Should Israelites reinstate drink/cake offerings in exile? I'll say that again. Pre-exilic rituals revisited. Should Israelites reinstate drink/cake offerings in exile? And I wanted you guys to see Barbecue Becky because she's on the phone, if anybody, anyway, in social media, I'll continue because not everybody knows what happened with Barbecue Becky. The reason for this study, as I said, recently I came across a video by Ron Shields, we know him as Divine Prospect, entitled An Impromptu Demonstration of a Pre-Exilic Israelite. And if you don't know the video, check it out on the YouTube and let us know your thoughts. The video was presented as a demonstration of sorts to illustrate modern Israelites, the appropriateness of reinstating a monthly wine/cake sacrifice to Yah in their lands of exile. So this is something that he's saying there was a brother there, and later on he's going to reveal that he's demonstrating this wasn't the actual ritual, but it was a demonstration of what could be done in one's own home and own spaces. It says a sizable number of prospect viewers, if you go to the video you'll see, sided with his rediscovery of what he terms pre-exilic culture. And we heard Brother Mario, who was just speaking with Sister Mayana, and had kind of that same thought. And only a few objected. Not a lot of people were taken up in arms. A lot of us who weighed in thought, okay, this is a good idea. After viewing, my curiosity was piqued, and I initiated a dialogue. So I have the picture of the dialogue here so that you can see. And so I'm just going to read because it's very short and brief. And this is the questions that led to this conversation that we're having right now. So after I viewed the video, I said, interesting indeed. Is this to be done in any, and any is bold, random location that the individual chooses? The brother goes on to say, not necessarily. I was just demonstrating the ritual for the brother, not formally performing it. It should be done on a stone pillar. And what are we talking about is libation. And for those who don't know, libation is a liquid offering, okay? It should be done on a stone pillar outside, a rooftop, or a temple area. If none of these are available, it can be done in a backyard or park area. I believe I touch on this in a video, and actually in the video, he was in the park, and that was one of the concerns, is that he was in the park, and even though it was a demonstration, he was in front of a tree doing this demonstration. And for those who read Torah and go over Torah, this can be like, whoa, you would have to sit down. This is why I wanted to ask questions and not make assumptions. In the video, he mentions Jacob. So I said, you mentioned Jacob doing such a ritual. Is he the only pre-exilic example of this act? And he goes on to say, we have an implicit meaning. It's not on top of the surface. It's something that's implied within the text. In Genesis 14-18, with Melchizedek being that he was a priest of the Most High and Abraham. So I asked if Jacob is the only pre-exilic example of someone, because, 2 to 3 witnesses establish a matter, okay? This is Torah. And usually it's established a matter of death. It goes on to say, but 2 or 3, you need witnesses to establish a case. So I'm asking for other witnesses. And he goes on to say pre-exilic examples would be an incident before Assyrian Babylonian captivity, for those who want to know what pre-exile, essentially. So there are plenty of examples, but patristic or patriarchal, basically, I would say that the best would be Jacob. And this presentation is going to go and examine, this presentation is going to go and examine what Brother Divine Prospect said is the best example. Pre-exilic would be the best example, my apologies, of this incident. But I'm going to pause right here. Just if everybody can just bear with me. Sister Maya, are you on the line?
Yes, I just had myself on mute.
No problem. Let me know what you think thus far. I got to do a little baby conversation real quick. Let me know
how you
what
got to regulate.
Yeah. Basically, you already know that's code talk for how to go regulate. So let me know, and I'll continue the conversation. We teasing it out, y'all. We teasing out the kinks. So be patient, and we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Let me know what you think thus far.
Well, the best part about our show is that it is a conversation, it is a round table, and we love to get the thoughts of the people. So from what I can see, we have a lot of people who are listening, a lot of people who have called in. So if there's anybody out there that wants to press 1 and weigh in on the conversation, right now would be a great time to do so. Press 1, let us know what you think so far. So Emunah has brought out a lot of great points. We're looking at pre-exilic, and from what Brother Prospect has offered as the time frame for pre-exilic is from the time of Avi Avraham up until the Babylonian captivity. That period of time is the time that he's looking at and saying that libations took up a portion of that period, that patristically, or according to the works, deeds, and thoughts of the patriarchs, libations would have been commonplace enough that you would not have necessarily needed the priesthood to produce this or to perform this, but instead these were things that were done by individuals. And most specifically, as Emunah pointed out, that the patriarch Yaakov is seen to have performed what could, without question, be described as a libation ritual. And so, according to Brother Prospect, Yaakov is the absolute best example of our patriarchs performing this ritual. We see context, we see pretext, we see what's happening before, after, and during. And so Yaakov would be a very complete picture of the libation ritual. And so I believe in this presentation we will see where Ron Divine Prospect picks up the performance by Yaakov in Bereshit, and we'll see whether or not that is necessarily the starting point for that. So now that we have Emunah back, if you were meaning to press 1, too slow. Now we have our hostess back in the hostess seat. So next time, be a little quicker on the trigger, and we can bring you into the conversation. Emunah, welcome back.
Thank you so much. My goodness, y'all. Breathe. Definitely. So thank you so much, Sister Mana. We're going to look at Yaakov right now and continue the dialogue that leads up to what you're about to hear. And so essentially, I asked the question, if Jacob is the best illustration of pre-exilic practice, I would have to re-examine the details of this incident to parallel them with the information you presented. We're doing a compare and contrast. We're responsible for when our brothers and sisters present information, we're responsible to search that information out. Sometimes we're triggered, and we had that conversation last week about being triggered by a thought or a concept. We've had it many seasons ago about, triggering a response to F words, speaking about feminism. And so what happens a lot in our community is that the minute we see something, we're triggered. And we're not necessarily are able to articulate why we don't agree with something. We would, like everyone likes to say, result to attacking the person or getting personal with the person. That's not what's going on right here. What's going on is that I saw something that made me go, I did diligent inquiry, and then I went and got some information that I want to present here so that we can continue to have the conversation. Once again, for those who might be, Prospect, they over there talking about you. It's all good. We invited the brother to the conversation, and hopefully he's able to come and bring some clarity after he hears what some of my findings were. So I told him I will have to re-examine the details of this incident to parallel them with the information you presented here. As you know, subscribing to and or resurrecting some of the practices of our forefathers, and Sister Mana was speaking about that in the opening, can be controversial. This is something worth looking into. The brother goes on to say that he agrees. It can be when things are misinterpreted. So that's what we're hoping that we're not doing here, which is misinterpreting what he was trying to present. And for this reason, I was trying to give an opportunity to understand that so far what I got, the thought process is that we should be doing libations and cake offerings in exile, and preferably you can do them on mountaintops and temple mounts. But if you can't find that, your backyard, a park, He's suggesting to the people that these are the places that it can be done. Most of our cultural understanding, this is Divine Process speaking, comes from the lens of Second Temple Judaism. These practices follow the northern tribes that migrated into Africa after the Assyrian siege. I expound on this on the last lecture I did on my channel. He goes on to say, libations was a common practice in Canaan. Keep that in mind. As evidence also from the Ugaritic text. Re-implementing it for the reasons expressed in this video, meaning praying, trying to beseech the Creator, requests, things of that nature, are in alignment with mitzvot we've practiced as it's seen, instructed in Torah. He says, thanks for the feedback, sis. And lastly, I say, you're welcome regarding the feedback. I will certainly research this topic and review the videos you mentioned. Stay tuned. So, and my honest brother Sal is my witness. I thought the debate talk for you was off the air last week, and so we understood that there was more time, and so this is why you're having like a different edition of Debate Talk for You, because the presentation was just coming together, and now was the opportunity to present. So here we are. If anybody has any questions thus far, feel free to ask them. Press 1 before we get into the meat and potatoes. If you're following, let us know that you're following. Brother South says we have one caller on the line. We can go to the caller before we go into the presentation.
All right, let's go to 678. You're live.
Hey, this is Marielle again. Okay, so I did a little bit more, and it's very interesting. But my thing is, well, my question would be to y'all queens. What do y'all think about what is drink offerings? We know we had several different offerings that came up, like as far as meat offerings, free will offerings, but there was drink offerings, and we do know that Yaakov was the first. And I'm not saying that I agree with this or anything like this, but it does, or I disagree. But I'm just trying to get understanding as far as it, because this is libation is very new to me as far as we're dealing with pre-exilic. But there were like drink offerings as well as we know Feast of Unleavened Bread. There was wine and offering that was being done, as well as usually at the end of every Shabbat there was a thing called COTTAGE, which would be a breaking of the wine and breaking of a drinking of the wine and breaking of bread, as well as and if you dabble in the Brit Kadashah, Yahshua has done the same thing as far as this is my body, break it, and this is my blood, this is the wine of my blood, drink it in remembrance of me. So what are y'all takes onto that, and do y'all think that's kind of similar to a libation as well, as far as drink offerings and the Feast of Unleavened Bread week, and as well as the commandment that Yahshua had gave to in the Brit Kadashah?
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the question. Hopefully, the things that have been researched and compiled here would answer some of the questions of the thought processes on whether or not we should or we shouldn't. And so I implore you to stay tuned and continue to listen. And then when we get to the other side of this presentation, then we can definitely proceed in what we make of what I found. Somebody could be like, Emunah, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? We're going to see what it is. So drink offerings before the priesthood. So this is what we're talking about, right? Drink offerings before the priesthood. A closer look at Jacob, which is the, quote, best example, end quote, of pre-exilic libation ritual. Bereshit Genesis 35 and 14 was cited by Prospect, and not only a divine prospect, but if you look it up and people talk about libations in the Bible, you're going to see Bereshit Genesis 35 and 14 pop up, okay? And you can see that at the 2-minute and 4-second mark on the video. So I'm going to read 35 and 14. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. So in and of itself, if you read that, you're like, see, there you go, right there, open and shut. Jacob did it. Bereshit Genesis 35:14. But not yet. We're going to continue. I hope you have out your text. Bust out your scripts so you can read along. starting at Genesis 35, doesn't give sufficient evidence to support modern-day Israelites pouring drink offerings, and these are the reasons. Number one, Jacob and the naming of Bethel starts before chapter 35. I'll say that again. The first reason that I'm presenting here is that Jacob and the naming of Bethel starts before chapter 35. The second reason, Jacob was memorializing an event / visitation from the Creator. That's the second reason. This wasn't a random act. Jacob was memorializing the visitation from the Creator. The third reason, Jacob was prompted, and we're definitely going to go into all of these reasons, so don't get overwhelmed. Jacob was prompted to return to Bethel and build the altar. So by the time we get to 35, this is the fulfillment of what he was told to do. Number 4, Jacob was the third generation covenant child. And again, like I said, we're going to go touch briefly on each one of these points. And number 5, after this account, the next recording, after the Jacob, the best example or illustration of doing drink offerings or libations, the next account, the next time we hear about drink offerings, they're only prescribed to the priesthood. And that's something very important to note, that after this time, and I could be wrong, so feel free to double check, but after this time, the next time we hear, it is regulated and it is under the authority of the priesthood. So I'm going to continue. The question is, Jacob did it, but can you? Again, like we said, a lot of things our foreparents did, but then the question is, can we and should we do it in this day and time? So we're going to examine some events leading up to Jacob's offering or his libation. In Bereshit Genesis 12, and I'll give you some time to go there. Bereshit Genesis 12, we're going to start with Abraham. Starting at verse 2, it says, Now the Most High had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show you. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and you shall be a blessing. This is the Creator speaking to Abraham. He says, And I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curse thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Once again, that's Genesis 12, 2 and 3. No, 1, 2, and 3. My apologies. Okay, we're going to continue. So Abraham departed as the Most High had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. This is all important. If you know me, I usually don't teach in this capacity, but you can ask Sister Mayana, like I read the whole chapter because I like context, right? And so I'm only doing and sharing with you what I make a practice to do myself. And Abraham took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, or Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. 6. And Abraham passed through the land onto the place of Shechem, onto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. 7. And the Most High appeared unto Abraham and said, this is important, this is why I'm reading it, right? Unto thy seed will I give this land, meaning he's in the land of Canaan now, and there builded he an altar unto the Most High who appeared to him. And so Abraham is the first that we're seeing explicitly interfacing with the Creator, and as a result, he left the land of his nativity. He trusted the Creator on faith. He walked out. And the Most High is like, I'm going to bring you here into this space. I'm going to give it to you and your seed, and you're going to be blessed. And after this, it doesn't say that Abraham necessarily gave drink offering, which he may have. This is something that someone can argue, or meal offering, but it does say he builded an altar. Okay? So, again, the question is, Jacob did it. Now Abraham did it. He built an altar, but can we, or should we? So when the Creator appears to Jacob in a vision, it wasn't a cold call. You know how somebody cold call you and you don't know who they are, right? It wasn't a cold call because we see that the Most High already spoke to Jacob's grandfather, which would be Abraham. He already has a relationship with Abraham, okay? And so Genesis 28:13, that's where I'm at right now, Genesis 28 and 13. So we're going to continue to look at the context that leads us to, or puts in perspective, Genesis 35. So we're at 28 and 13. Now Isaac called Jacob. This is after the situation is going on with Esau and Yaakov. Esau sells his birthright. Things are not going well. Esau's marrying the nations round about him, right? Rebecca calls her husband and like, we have to send off Yaakov. Yaakov is about to go on the run now. He's 40 years old, and he's leaving his parents' house, okay? Everything that he's known. So they said, go find a wife from the family in Padam Aram. 28 and 13. And Isaac called Yaakov and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, you shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise and go to Padam Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. This is important. 3, and the Most High Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you mayest be a multitude of people. Isaac is repeating the blessing that the Most High already said through covenant to Abraham that he would give to his seed. Isaac is part of Abraham's seed. Now Jacob is part of Abraham's seed, and Isaac is repeating the blessing to Jacob. He sends him off with a blessing. Hope you're following. Hope I'm not going too fast. If I am, let me know. I will slow down. So now we're still on 28 and 3. It goes on to say, and give thee the blessing of Abraham. You see, this is Isaac speaking to his son, saying the blessing of Abraham. We just read the blessing of Abraham in Bereshit, Genesis 12. To you and to your seed with you, that you may inherit the land wherein you are a stranger, which the Most High gave unto Abraham. So this is a spiritual inheritance that's being passed down from generation to generation, letting the prior generation know, letting the future generation know what you're supposed to expect, what's going to be coming, okay? So I just wanted to establish that this is an already existing covenant. Okay. 28 and 10. So Abraham listens to the voice of his parents. And Yaakov went, sorry, I keep mixing them up, my bad, it's Jacob, went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows and lay down in that place to sleep. What is Abraham doing? He's running from his brother, essentially. He's going to Padam Aram. He's getting a wife. He's by himself, alone, and he's in a place. He's not traveling at night. He takes the stone for his pillow, and he goes to sleep. He did pick the location, but he didn't pick the location to do anything particular in the sense of just offering libations or giving. He didn't. He just went to sleep, okay? So we're going to continue. It is important to note that Yaakov did not prompt or attempt to invoke or dedicate. And I might say, let me say that, the text does not indicate that he did any of this. Let me just be clear, because sometimes we be nitpicking. The text does not indicate that he did any of this. So he did not attempt to invoke or dedicate anything to any deity at this point, the point that he takes the pillows and goes to sleep. He simply stopped over because night had fallen. Hopefully, we're following along. I'm going to come to a place where I'm going to stop when we because I went backwards in the story to come forward. So we're at verse 12. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels, or the Malachim of the Most High, ascending and descending on it. So he's having a vision. We remember Abraham also had a vision when he's entering into this covenant with the Creator. So this is not a one-off type of situation. 13. And behold, the Most High stood above it and said, I am the Most High, your power of Abraham thy father, and the power of Isaac, and the land wherein you lie to thee will I give it unto your seed. So he's personally now, he may have heard of the blessings of Abraham, he may have heard of the covenant, but now this is personal. Yaakov, he's having this personal experience. And the Creator is appearing to him and saying, I'm the power of your forefathers. Now I'm going to take care of you. And it goes on in 14. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Same covenant. I'm going to repeat myself just a little bit until I get to the timeline. It says it is important to note that Jacob is getting a personal introduction to an already existing agreement. He has left the protection of his father's house and now needs to learn of and depend on the Creator for himself. So we get to 28 and 5. And behold, I am with you. This is the Creator speaking to Jacob. And will keep you in all places whither you go, and will bring you again into this land, for I will not leave you until I have done that which I have spoken to you. So the Most High is like, no worries, I got you. And when you get back here, I'm going to bring you back in safety. And then Jacob is going to respond. So, again, he receives a personal assurance that he will be protected and provided for by the Creator until the promises made to him are fulfilled. I hope everyone is following along. It says, Jacob's reaction to his dream vision of the Creator confirming his covenant with him. The reason why I said we can't start at 35 is because we had to already establish that there was a covenant on the table. He was aware of this covenant. His father gave him the blessings of the covenant, and now he's going into personally entering into the covenant. So we're at verse 6. And Jacob awakened out of his sleep, and he said, surely the Most High is in this place, and I knew it not. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, or house of Elohim, and this is the gate of heaven. So he declares it the house of God and the gate of heaven, because he sees Malaks going up and down the ladder, and he's interfacing with the divine. And Jacob rose up early in the morning. This is what he does after this divine intervention that he's experienced, and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. And oil, we know, oftentimes later on with the priesthood, the oil is the consecration. The oil is the consecration. So what is he doing? He's marking a spot that to him, essentially what he's saying is holy, because he interfaced with the divine, and the divine reestablished his covenant in this holy place. And because he's laying upon these stones that he made for his pillows, and this is where he got this vision, he dedicates and consecrates this stone. And later on he goes on to call the place Bethel. So before I review, I want to check to make sure I'm hearing a little bit of dinging. Before we get to the famous, infamous Genesis 35, I just want to review really quickly and then take a pause to make sure everybody is still with us. Genesis, before we get there, so first, Jacob is the son of a pre-existing covenant. Jacob leaves his mother and father and has a personal encounter with the Creator. He vows a vow that as a man he is bounded to. Wait a minute, did I skip something? I think I skipped something. I did skip something. Let me jump back. He bore all upon it. 19. And he called the name of that place Bethel, or Beit El. But the name of the city was called Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if the Most High will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Most High be my power. So it's pretty self-explanatory. He's put in a contingency plan. The Most High is like, yo, I'm the power of Abraham, Yitzchak. Right? He's not Yaakov yet. He's like, I'll do these things for you. And Yaakov is like, yep, when you do those things, then you will be my power. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be the Most High's house. And of all that you shall give me, I will surely give the 10th unto you. So he vows a vow, says, if it happens, you'll be my power. I'll accept the covenant. And then he says, I'll give you a tithe or a tenth of when you bring me back in safety. And so back to the review, He vows a vow that as a man he's bounded to keep. He vows the 10th, and then he takes the pillows and consecrates them with oil, a.k.a. the stones. So I'm going to pause right here and to check and see if we have any callers or if any questions. Let me check on Sister Mayana first before we continue. Sister Mayana?
On me?
Yes, sis, go ahead.
No, we just got some information that although we have been waiting diligently for Brother Divine, he's not here at the moment, but he is listening in. He is a bit preoccupied, but I presume, or we're very hopeful, that he'll be joining the conversation as soon as his availability allows. But just so the audience knows, he is aware of the show, and he informs us that he is listening in. So our expectation is that he will be calling in as soon as time and opportunity affords.
All right, thank you for the update, Mr. Mariana. Brother Sal, do we have any callers on the line?
All right, family, I see we have a lot of callers. I see some Skype callers out there. Once again, the number is 319-527-6239. Again, today's show is the title, Are All Rituals Righteous? So once again, the number is 319-527-6239. Press number 1 and we'll add you in. Nobody's standing by at this particular time. Press a 1. You can continue.
All right. It's a short presentation, so no worries. We'll get to the end of it very soon. We just keep recapping just to make sure that everybody's following along. So, again, the question still remains, Jacob did it, but can we? Jacob is the best example of this pre-exilic pre-priesthood, really, thought of giving libations. Not to say that it would never have existed in other spaces, but he's the most colorful example that we can refer to of this being done. So between Genesis 28 and 34, Jacob arrived at Laban, his uncle's house. So if you don't know the story, feel free to go back and read the story. In 20 years, he's established there. He got married, and he procreated with Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. So, again, 20 years passes between 28 and 34, okay? And when it comes the time for him to leave his uncle's house because he's been beguiled, his wages have been changed, it's time for him to go back and return to the land that the Most High had promised through Abraham and Isaac, and now Jacob is going to go and walk into the promise. Because remember, what we just read is the Most High said, I will bring you back. So that was part of the deal. And Yaakov says, when you bring me back, then I'll worship you. Okay, so Bereshit Genesis 35. And the Most High said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel. This is the place he named Bethel, that prior was named Luz, and dwell there and make thee an altar unto the Most High. So at this point, Yaakov is commanded to make the altar. The first time we don't know whether or not he was commanded. It just says he had the vision, and then he makes the altar from the stones. This time he's commanded to make the altar. It says that appeared unto you, I'm the Most High that appeared unto you when you fled from the face of your brother Esau. And we just read that account. So 35 and 6. So, wait, let me back up. Sorry. I'm just skipping all over the place. My hand slipped, y'all. All right, boom. It says, the last verse was so nice I had to say it twice. It says, the Most High said unto Yaakov, arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto the Most High. Simply put, Yaakov was commanded to make an altar unto the Most High. It says he did not walk up to a random bush or express some burning desire to pour out libation for the purposes of prayer. Sometimes people pour out libations for the dead, in memory of, for whatever reason, because different cultures, and we're going to touch on that a little bit, have different reasons as to why they pour out libations. So that wasn't his reason. Instead, he was following directions like his grandfather Abraham did when he was given a directive, and we know that directive was to leave your father's house. Bereshit 35 and 2. Then Yaakov said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange deities that are among you, and be clean and change your garments. So he knows the drill, but to some degree, because we know Raquel leaves with her father's idols. And so he knows the drill, but he wasn't fully committed until he says, when you bring me back. And so amongst them, he's aware that there are strange deities or gods amongst them. It says, and let us arise and go to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto the Most High, who answered me in the day of my distress and was with me in the way in which I went. So he has not forgotten. Okay. Sorry, I had to take a pause. Genesis 35:4. And they gave unto Yaakov all the strange deities which are in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. And Yaakov hid them under the oak tree which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of the Most High was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Yaakov. And for those who don't know why he was concerned, is because he was leaving Laban's house without necessarily a farewell party. Okay, so he's concerned about Laban, he's concerned about Esau, he's concerned all around. 35:6. So Yaakov came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan. So he's back to the promised land. That is Bethel, and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar, so he followed the instructions, and called the place El Bethel, because there the God, it says God, G-O-D, appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. So he's back to the spot of the stone pillow. Okay, he's back to the spot of the stone pillow. So let's proceed. And verse 9, and the Most High appeared unto Yaakov again, and when he came out of Padam Aram, and blessed him. And the Most High said unto him, your name is Jacob. Thy name shall no longer be anymore called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And he called his name Israel. And the Most High said unto him, I'm the Most High Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come of thy loins. 12. And the land which I gave to Abraham and Yitzchak, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. So it's reaffirming what is already on record. 13. And God went up from him in the place where he walked with him. So he had a vision when he first was going, and he had a vision when he got back. So 35:14. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him being the creator, even a pillar of stone, and he poured, this is where the 35:14 comes in now. And I needed to go back and get the pretext, the subtext, the context of how he, when you say Jacob did it, in what context was Jacob doing it, and what led Jacob to do this? It says, now we're at 35:14. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. 15. And Jacob called the name of the place where the Most High spake with him, Bethel. So he's saying it again. He said it the first time 20 years ago. He's coming back. He's calling it El Bethel, the place where the Creator dwells, basically, house of power, basically. So it stands to reason that Jacob offered drink and wine to the Creator based on the vow that he made. It doesn't say, okay, Jacob did this for the vow, but he did make a vow. He returned to the spot of the vow, and he's giving an offering. It says that he made some 20 years before. In the beginning of the chapter, he was commanded to return to the place that the vow was made, and he did so. Now, the law of vows, for those who may be new or those who don't remember, is in Bamidbar Numbers 30:2, which says when a man makes a vow to the Most High, and a vow, sometimes we get confused with a vow and an oath. A vow, more often than not, it has a payment attached to it. If you do this, then Yiftach, I believe that's his name, he vowed a vow. Right? It's if you do this, then I'll do that. So Jacob vowed a vow, Numbers 30:2. When a man makes a vow to the Most High or takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything he said. So this is why I said it stands to reason that the return, the offering that Jacob is making, is based on, I'll give you a tenth, possibly. Okay? After the time of Jacob's explicit example of drink offering, we see the offerings of all kinds being regulated by the Creator. So after this time, there's a regulation put. It says the pre-exilic duties of offerings has been given solely to the priest. Now, if someone has other information that can show that at this time we're not in exile. At this time, Israel is in the wilderness. When we have begun to see all of the regulations, Israel hasn't even come into the land as yet to be kicked out of the land. So this will still classify as pre-exilic when the priesthood is now set in place and through Moshe, the Most High is giving his law, statutes, and commandments. It says the location, amount, and manner of offering have all been regulated by the Creator. Remember in the beginning, my questions to Brother Divine Prospect is how is this supposed to go? Is it according to the person? Is it according to where they want to do it? Or how? And the reason I was asking these questions is reflecting on Torah and remembering what Torah says. The idea that we, the people, can and should offer anywhere we see fit is contrary to what Torah says, and here is why. Once again, if anyone has any information that they would like to share that will shed or bring more light to the table, feel free to do so. Deuteronomy 12. Let me take a swig of water. I hope you guys are following along. I know this is Emunah in a different capacity. You usually don't see me in this mode, but every once in a while. Deuteronomy 12. These are the statutes and judgment which ye shall observe to do in the land, which the Most High, the power of your fathers, give you to possess. Again, this is all covenant talk. The Most High is like, this is what you got to do. All the days that you live upon the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which you shall possess serve their powers, upon the high mountains and upon the hills, and upon every green tree, because there are similarities in worship. For us to think that there are not similarities in worship, we will be sadly mistaken. So the Most High is like, in these particular places that they are worshiping, on high mountains, upon hills, under green leafy trees, because spiritually there are things that, there are portholes and energy spaces that people are trying to tap into, and this is why they're going to these specific places. The Most High said, destroy that for their foreign power. But then one would say, well, that's if you worship in another idol. That's if you worship in another power, not the Creator. But we're going to keep reading. And ye shall overthrow their altars, and break down their pillars, and burn their groves with fire, and you shall hew down the graven images of their deities, and destroy the names of them out of that place. The call to destroy the places, objects, and memories of the worship of foreign deities are laid bare in this chapter. There's also an admonishment for the nation of Israel not to worship the Creator in the way that the nations worship their deities. So the Most High is like, I'm holy, therefore you, Yisrael, shall be holy. The way they worship is not the way that Israel should or was commanded to worship. So it goes on to say, ye shall not do so unto your power, meaning you shall not worship the Creator. This is after that we have become a nation. We have come out of Egypt. The Most High is like, do not worship him the way the nations, the way the Canaanites, the way the Philistines, the Perizzites, the way any other people are worshiping their power. The Creator left on record to say, do not worship me in that way, meaning do not worship the Creator on any high mountain or any hill or under any green leafy tree. You shall not do so unto the Most High your power. Okay? I can't, this is what the text is saying if we go to the book of Deuteronomy. So we're not to do whatever comes to our mind for the Creator. The Bible has left on record specific instructions. If we try to add or take away to suit our own will, that is transgression and deviation from the law. And we know in the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe left it on record that you shall not add or take away. I know it gets controversial, but today, for those who just joined us, we're talking about all rituals righteous, and specifically right now we're speaking about the concept of reintroducing, or the possibility of reintroducing libation, drink offering, and cake offering in our exile. It's not just reintroducing the thought, but in the lands in which we are scattered, and I have to put that in there. So how should we offer drink offerings, bread, meal offerings, animal sacrifices? I mean, to be fair and honest, I've seen, people killing sheep in captivity, saying they're doing Pesach, sitting the sheep neck and pouring the blood out on the floor. You see what I'm saying? Are these things acceptable? So it's not only just libations and cake offerings. There are also people who are saying, I'm doing righteously. This is what it says for me to do. and they're sacrificing animals in exile. Okay? So it goes on to say, but onto the place which the Most High, your power, shall choose. So the Creator is like, not anywhere. The place in which he shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name, even unto his habitation shall you seek, and thither you shall come. So no under any just green leafy tree, not anywhere you choose, not on any mountain or only where the Most High has put his name. 6. And there you shall bring your burnt offerings and your sacrifices and your tithes and heave offerings of your hand and your vows and your freewill offerings and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. And there you shall eat before the Most High your power. 7. And there you shall eat before the Most High your power, and you shall rejoice in all that you put your hand onto, you and your household wherein the Most High your power has blessed thee. These Thanksgiving offerings or return to the Most High is tied to the blessings. Our state in exile is tied to our disobedience. And so this is why the Most High said in another scripture, I have to pull it up, that I'm going to send you into the land and you're going to eat defiled bread amongst the nations. Right? And so this blessing, these offerings, these burnt offerings, the heave offerings, the tithes are tied to our blessings, and our blessings are tied to our return. I'm going to continue. Sal, let me know if anyone is on the line. I'm almost done. I'm rounding the corner right now. I have only 4 more slides. So please stick with us. If you or someone you know, in this case, we do know Brother Divine Prospect. He shared the information, and so it's saying pouring out drink offerings or oil or meat offerings, right? It's not just, I'm not just picking on you, Brother Divine. I'm not picking on you at all. I'm just examining something that was presented to the public. But if anywhere that we're going and there's something that brings to mind a question, it is our obligation to investigate the feeling that we're having. You know what I'm saying? And to really get an understanding of where it's coming from. Is it valid? Is it invalid? Okay, this is being responsible. Remember, there's a prohibition on offering such things outside a designated space. Unless someone is able to show that this has changed and that we can offer outside of designated space and it's accepted. Because it's one thing to offer, is another thing for it to be accepted. But I'm going to keep going. Deuteronomy 12 and 26. Only the holy things, and I skipped a little bit in case y'all are like, yo, how she got to 26? Deuteronomy 12 and 26. Only the holy things which you have and your vows you shall take and go on to the place which the Most High shall choose. So far, Torah is saying we can't do it like Yaakov did it, because after Yaakov did it, and after our foreparents and after we became a nation, there was more order, there was more prohibition, there's more regulation placed on. And again, if you don't know, Israel was supposed to be like priests unto the nations. But when we were in the wilderness, the whole golden calf situation and other things, all of those rights were put onto Levi, and Levi now is officiating for the nation in this capacity. And Levi has their own separate covenant. So Egyptians gave libation and drink offerings, Greeks, Romans, Buddhists, West African culture. So this is a common within system of worship. I had a nice little picture, which I'm not going to be able to see unless I give you the link. But it's a picture that's showing, the Grecians doing it, West African libations. And we even see it in today's time where, rappers, it's in the person to say pour out a little liquor. And we know that they're pouring it out for the dead. That's interesting how some of us in the Western Hemisphere still have those practices with us. And I found a quote from the book of Ani, and it translated as, pour libation for your father and mother who rest in the valley of the dead. God will witness your action and accept it. Do not forget to do this even when you are away from home. This is not Torah I'm reading. This is from Kemet, okay? For as you do for your parents, your children will do for you also. So this is an admonition according to, I'm not a big Kemet person. I was reading from AfricanHolocaust.net. You can check out the article on libations. It was from interesting stuff. And so a bit from that, it says structure and significance for those who may be wondering what other nations will be doing with libations, and is it the same thing that Israel is doing with libations? And we know we're not supposed to pour out or cut ourselves. The Torah says don't cut yourself for the dead. So apparently other nations were doing other things to show their feelings or their loss for the dead. And so this is all throughout different customs. You would really have to check that out. So structure and significance. The libationer, the ones who perform the ritual, enter into his undertaking in order to recognize and proclaim the existence and superiority of those higher powers, to solicit and obtain their blessings for a particular individual or a particular group. Why would somebody be doing this? They want something from the deity. Okay? It says to repair imbalance in a person, a family, a clan, a subgroup, or an African nation, because this is specifically talking about libations in Africa, or in a physical environment, or to nullify a perceived threat or such imbalance. So this is why this author is sharing with us his research as to why certain West African nations and African nations in general do libations. And we also know, like I said, some of it is to the dead, some of it is to beseech the deity for whatever it is they're looking for. I'm going to go on, and like I said, we have 2 more slides to go, so thank you so much for sticking with us. For those who have just joined us, we're having a brief presentation. This is the Relationship Challenge Special Edition. Should all rituals righteous is the question. So as it relates to the biblical account and the sanction of libation/drink offering outside of the explicit account of Jacob, the book of Numbers holds the most successive amounts or accounts of the lawful manner in which drink offerings can be given. So if you want to know about drink offerings and the way in which the Torah says that it's acceptable, you have to go to the book of Numbers. And again, everything about this is regulated from who can do it, to where they can do it, to what they can do, to how they can do it. The measurements, everything. With that said, the question now remains, do you still think that we the people have the authority or permission to change, alter, or amend what has been left on record? I'll say that again, ask the question. With that said, do you still think that we the people have the authority or permission to change, alter, or amend what has been left on record? And what has been left on record is what I have just read. And lastly, in closing, until we open the phone lines, Ezekiel 20 and 38. Ezekiel 20 and 38. As it relates to, does the Creator desire, not only does desire, will He desire and accept our offerings and sacrifices in exile? Because that's where we are right now. We're in exile. We looked at Jacob. Jacob was pre-exilic. He was one of the progenitors. Okay? We see Abraham doing it. We see a change when it comes into the wilderness. And now the question is, okay, we're here now. Is this a good idea? Should we be doing these things? And if we do these things, are they accepted? So lastly, Ezekiel 20 and 39. As for you, O house of Israel, thus saith the Most High Power, go ye, serve ye every one his idols, and hereafter also. And again, please read the whole of Ezekiel, because Most High is going in on the nation. You have to read the whole of Ezekiel for the sake of time. I'm just reading here, but please read all of Ezekiel 20, because the Most High is going in on the nations, right? On Israel. It says, if you will not hearken unto me, but pollute ye my holy name, no more with your gifts and with your idols. 40. For in mine holy mountain, in the mountain of the height of Israel, saith the Most High, there shall all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, serve me. There will I accept them, and there will I receive your offering, or require your offerings, and the first fruits of your oblations with all your holy things. I'll read that one again because I messed it up a little bit. Ezekiel 20:49. For in mine holy mountain, in the mountain of the height of Israel, saith the Most High Power, there shall all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, serve me. There will I accept them, and there will I require your offerings and the first fruit of your oblations with all your holy things. I will accept you with sweet savor when I bring you out from the people and gather you out of the countries wherein you have been scattered. And I will sanctify you, and I will be sanctified in you before the heathen. And ye shall know that I am the Most High, when I shall bring you into the land of Israel, into the country from which I have lifted up mine hand to give it to your fathers. So that is the findings, according to the Torah, the Tanakh, the prophets, relating to the drink offering, relating to this particular ritual, and whether or not we can or should be doing it, and whether or not it can and will be accepted. So with that, I will open up the mic. We're going to check on Sister Mayana first while I take a swig of water. Sister Mayana, you sleep?
Nah. I got my nap in before we went on the air. It's been a long week. It's only Tuesday. I promise you it's been a long week.
So what are your thoughts, Sister Mayana?
Well, obviously you were very thorough, and so I think that it was an excellent presentation for the people to have a well-rounded introduction to context. And unfortunately, very often when we find something that's new and shiny, we get excited because we are a people that enjoys being tantalized. We like to be stimulated. And sometimes the practicality of Torah is a little boring. But when we can do cool things, or, apparently cool things, like pouring out a drink and making cakes and the like, and do these very ritualistic, very hands-on, very participant-oriented customs, participate in these very real ways, then it makes it feel like we're doing something. It makes it feel like we're participating in real ways, substantive ways, instead of just living in this realm of faith, and it's really boring. A lot of people complain that it's really lonely, but this is something we can do, and so I can appreciate the appeal. And I believe that the Brother Divine has good intentions. He's obviously very well studied. He's obviously very well researched. But the concern then becomes whether or not the things that we excavate from our past, whether or not we put them in the proper context when we reintroduce them to the present. We did a lot of things. And what is being termed pre-exilic. I find it very interesting that we are calling this particular time frame pre-exilic, and beginning with Abraham. I think that the beginning with Abraham is very interesting also, probably because we acknowledge Abraham as our chief patriarch. But the fact is, because you know me, I'm going to go back and say, listen, we got exiled from Eden. Our first exile was the Most High put us in this Edenic setting and then was like, y'all can't be here no more. And like you said in the presentation, this is not a result of anything good. This is a result of disobedience. When we have to be displaced, it's because the Most High has had a particular standard for us that we failed to meet, and so we had to be displaced from the place that the Most High had put us in. And that was our first exile. And if we learn anything from being exilic, it's that it's the consequence of something very, very bad. It's normally the consequence of some type of extreme disobedience. We've never been rewarded with exile. And so that's necessarily something to think about. When we see Abraham, like you said, when he goes and he follows the will of the Most High to go to another place, he's leaving his father's household, which is an excellent parallel to Yaakov leaving also his family's home to discover this next leg of his journey and becoming Israel. Leaving that state of Yaakov and becoming elevated in much the same way that Abraham later becomes Abraham. But I think that one of the key takeaways here is that exile We're going to being pre-exilic. Exile is a consequence. It's not a reward. And there's a lot of things that we did. In the conversation that I had with Brother Mariel, we were able to look at, because one of the frames that that Brother Mariel pointed to during that falls within that time frame of Abraham to Babylon, we see this big chunk of time where judges ruled. And that is before we have the kings introduced, before we have all these other things. And even here we see this is when everyone thought that everybody thought to do what was right in their own sight. And there's this. And this, we have the priests. That's another thing that we're not looking at also, is that during this pre-exilic time frame, this approved pre-exilic time frame, the priesthood does get established. So if what we were doing before was fine, there would be no need for the Most High to intercede and then regulate. Torah is extremely practical. We talked about the fact that Yaakov involves himself in or becomes involved in a marriage strategy that later gets not only regulated, but it gets prohibited. You literally cannot marry sisters now. The fact that someone did it pre-exilically does not justify doing it now, because there are literally regulations and laws against it still within this pre-exilic period of time. We find that even when we look at what kings are doing, we are not choosing to have a king among us because it's a good thing. It's because we want to be like everyone else. I think it's the preamble to Leviticus 18:18 is don't be like everybody else. I'm going to give you these laws about sexual immorality because you are sharing culture area with foreign nations and you are way too impressionable. I need you not to do these things. We have a series of laws that are specifically set up so that we do not participate in the things that the nations round about us are doing. And as you aptly pointed out, that this idea of libations is something that we share with foreign cultures. This is not uniquely Israel. It is not uniquely Abrahamic. It is not uniquely anything. And that it necessarily has ties to these other thoughts of invoking not just deities, but the ancestors and requesting things of them. And having, and this is an important, I know that we have a call, which is very exciting, but I want to just finish this thought first. When we invoke the deities or the ancestors, because a lot of this is tied to ancestor worship, whether we want to be serious about this or not, the Iron Age and calling it the Iron. As an anthropologist, I really appreciate the proper terminologies, and yes, we're calling it the Iron Age 1, Iron Age 2, Iron Age 3. I don't even know if everybody understands those distinctions, but I know that Divine uses them, and so I think that for those. I'm going to say this. I'm going to take a moment to say this. For those who are listening to this broadcast, and for those of you who are following the work of Brother Divine, it's imperative that your listening is on par with his speaking, because he uses terms and he uses concepts that are at a particular academic level. And if you're listening and you're mesmerized by the vocabulary and you're too intimidated to investigate, then you will necessarily miss a lot. What makes scholastic conversations, useful and edifying is the ability to engage the speaker. If it's just like, wow, he sounds smart. And unfortunately, I look at a lot of the comments, and it's, wow, he sounds smart. And a lot can get lost there. If you heard Emunah earlier say that when she heard it, she said, okay, I'm going to investigate. That's what you do. That's what all academics do. That's what Ron did. He saw a concept and he investigated it. And so he's able to have a conversation. In order for you to engage that conversation, you need to be at a level where you understand what he's talking about. Asking questions like, what Iron Age are you talking about? Libations in what sense? If Yaakov is your best example ever, then what are the other examples? Do you have lesser examples? Are there any other examples? And if not, why is that the only example and there are no others? We tend to become very, very impressed with our teachers, with our leaders, or with our speakers. And it's not to say that their research should not be appreciated. Believe me, I completely support appreciating the amount of work that goes into the presentations that I do, Emunah does, and obviously the brother does. But to really appreciate it, you have to say, okay, I know where it came from. You know, it's how you really, if you appreciate the process, then you can really understand some of these things. And in doing so, and just kind of tracing back the lines of thought, the connecting tissues of some of these concepts that we are discussing right now, you'll find that they are deeply embedded and thoroughly tied to foreign concepts. Just because we did them, we are doing them because we were at many points in our kind of our nascent beginnings, where we are formulating what we want to look like, what we're going to be like, how we're going to follow the Creator. We stumbled quite a bit with these more established, older cultures. The Hittites are doing things at this time. We see very often that a lot of the thoughts that Abraham is being influenced by is this already written code of the Hammurabi. It doesn't mean that Hammurabi existed first, but there's a written code. We're living among other people. This idea that Israel existed in a bubble and had no influence, that we weren't influencing and being influenced by the areas around us, round about us, that's not practical. It doesn't make any logical sense. We have to stop romanticizing our past. Right? Tapping wine glasses sounds extremely romantic. Being able to pour out libations. Consider this also. Our sacrifices, our offerings, and the like, they were all practical. Pouring libations to the dirt is not the same as turning over our grain and our meal sacrifices and our wines and the like to the priesthood, who would later eat them. Like, it didn't go nowhere. It wasn't just like we did this thing symbolically. We did all of these things practically. We took care. This was literally the rest of the nation taking care of the Levites, who had dedicated themselves, were consecrated to the Creator. And we don't want to lose the practicality of the things that we are doing. And we tie these things to all of these other abstract ideas, because mystifying it is just, it's more romantic than, okay, so we fed the Levites. That's not as exciting when we do our rituals and the like. It's more exciting that it goes to some magical place and it does all these things, and we're summoning the ancestors. And I'll end on this note. Summoning the ancestors in this way is unlawful. Like, if it's truly tied to these Canaanite rituals and these other spaces, then that's not lawful. To reverence and to give honor to our ancestors, we should do that, but to summon them in this way, or to liken, or to cheapen, even to make common our communication with the Most High, be it by duplicating that which is found in other cultures, we need to be very careful about what we are doing. I will pause here to remind the listening audience that if you want to call in and press 1, you have to dial in 319-527-6239 and press the number 1 to join our conversation. You'll have to do that before 10 p.m. because after 10 p.m. we'll go into the overtime portion of the show, and we will not be able to be heard live on the Blog Talk radio station. Also, if you're interested, our YouTube channel is www.youtube.com/Debate Talk for You. And also, Under the Palm has its own designated YouTube channel, and that is at /Under the Palm. Emunah, it's still just Under the Palm, or did we pull the whole Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak as our customized URL?
It's Under the Palm. YouTube
Under the Palm. Okay, so hallelujah. So I wanted to bring out that, there are significant ties to other nations, the Canaanites round about us, the Hittites round about us, and so we want to not forget that Israel is not existing in a bubble. Libations, in this sense, are not necessarily purely for us. And when we look at Yaakov, as Emunah has done, we see ample reason to bethink ourselves before we embrace all things ancient and all things ritualistic. And like we said before, several things are pre-exilic, and many of them are not necessarily the best idea. Yes, we see that Ron is inquiring whether or not the show is still on, so we'll have someone talk to him. And Emunah, if you're ready, I believe we have callers holding.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for that. That was the voice of Sister Mayana. For those who just joined us, that we're on a bonus, TRC special edition, the relationship challenge. We're talking about, what we're speaking about. If you just joined us, you missed the presentation. We're going to go in the overtime portion of the show. So feel free to call in, 319-527-6239. Pre-exilic rituals revisited. Should Israelites reinstate drink/cake offerings in exile? I spoke about it. We invited Brother Divine. He's working, so he's not able to join us at this time, but he is listening in. And this is based on an interaction that I had and a research that was prompted by the video that was shared. To my understanding, there are more videos. I didn't even watch it yet because, it's going to take me into more research. But as it relates to this particular one, I think there's sufficient enough evidence here for us to go and revisit the thought to see whether or not this is actually something that not that it's hooky spooky, but is it something that, because it doesn't make sense to send something that it's not going to be received. And so if it's on record by saying, I don't take that, and then we come in there trying to spend pesos, then it makes no sense, right? And so the Creator left on record, unless somebody could help me to show me in a different space where the Creator is like, yeah, I'll take your things. But so far, what the text reveals is that the Most High says and leaves on record that this is the way you do it. Don't worship me like everyone else worships their power. I'm holy. You should be holy. There's rules and regulations to worship, and we can't necessarily make it up as we go. And so we're going to go to the caller. Feel free to press 1 if you would like your voice to be heard. Be respectful. Keep it clean. Keep it professional. Brother Sal, the mic is yours.
All right, once again, let's go to the phone lines. And by the way, family, if you want to send me an email, it's debatetalkforyou@gmail.com. For those who are shy, don't want to really say let their voice be heard, but you still got a question, of course, use the email, debatetalkforyou@gmail.com, and I'll gladly read your questions out. Let's go to 678-497. You're live.
Okay, so this is Marielle again. I'm on here all night. Okay. I was listening to it, like I said at the beginning, I'm very new to this whole thought process and stuff. And Sister Moon, I want to say you did an excellent job. I got a lot of understanding. Just listening to you break down the scripture. And first of all, I did break a rule that y'all set for me. I did not give a shout out to my wife. I want to give a shout out to Danielle. Hey, babe, how you doing? But it was very, very interesting. What I did pick out of it was, like, yes, this was something that was done, but it was done out of with Jacob as far as like what the Most High did for him, and for this to be set as a memorial. And then you got to where it was done strictly from the priesthood. So that was very interesting as far as you pulling out of that. And as far as stuff not being done enough, because I am one of the ones who actually believe that we're in current exile right now. So a lot of things that we quote unquote do as far as like with these days and everything like that, we shouldn't really be doing it as far as like it being commanded. But I am underneath the impression that it would make good practice to do. It's something that will be done as far as like we should be doing as far as like being unified into it and actually preparing the next generation for just in case we do this generation or the next generation actually does end up going back into the land. Then they would know how to keep these customs or whatsoever. But as far as listening to this and stuff, I will now agree that we probably shouldn't do it shouldn't hold each other accountable for doing it until we actually get back into the land and actually do it. Should we practice the customs? Yes,
practice does make perfect, and practice over time. Just so, it's like a team preparing for a game or whatsoever. So, you got to practice, and stuff like that. So I do believe that if some people do decide they want to do it, do it in midst of practicing or a memorial, as far as trying to do what our ancestors did and and connect with our ancestors. But I really don't think that the Most High is really looking at it as far as, okay, so they're doing it, so I'm going to accept this offering. Because even when we came out of the Babylonian captivity, he says he didn't take us out of the captivity because of what we did. He took us out of captivity for his name's sake. And I believe that he's going to do the exact same thing when he brings us back into the land. So, yeah, I wanted to go ahead and applaud Sister Emunah for her presentation. I wish Divine would have got it, because I do want to hear his interpretation and everything that he has onto it. I'm going to go back and watch his video and actually watch the whole thing this time to see his perspective onto it. But right now, I'm under the impression that, we probably not supposed to be doing it. And, this probably was something that Jacob actually just done for himself and in honor for the Most High, and it kind of just passed along down the line. But we do have to be careful that we don't end up mixing it up with the other nations. But I do have one question. I guess I don't think, and I'm not sure if it's because of if y'all don't follow the Brit Kadashah or anything like that. But there is still the whole communion thing, in the sense of Yahshua saying, "Do this in remembrance of me," and he never really gave a specific location on where to do that at. So are y'all still under the impression that we're not supposed to do it because of that, or that y'all not really focusing onto that in that sense, where he established the communion thing, or whatsoever? So I do want to hold that question up as well. If you're not in the Brit Kadashah, then I definitely will understand that. But if y'all are in the Brit Kadashah, why would he say that? If it was only supposed to be done in the land, was he referring to that as well as only being done in the land, or that it could be done anywhere else? I just want to get Sister Emunah interpretation of that. If she follows the Brit Kadashah, she doesn't, then I know why.
Thank you for that. Thank you for calling in. I would say, I'm a person who I don't like to speak out of turn. I like to study what it is that I'm going to speak on. However, as it relates to the communion, to my recollection, is it something that's poured out, or is it something that's consumed?
I believe it was something that was consumed. I didn't know if there was a difference between pouring out or consuming. I'm always under the impression that you pour out into a cup and then drink, or pour and eat the bread in that sense. I'm not sure. For me, I'm not sure in the sense of how Yahshua would interpret it for himself. I've never really studied that part into it.
That is something I started studying a while ago. I would have to revisit it, and look at, what's being said, because that is also another space in which there's controversy, and so when we have these conversations, hopefully it's to just come to the table and bring the things that we have studied, because, the understandings that we may have, and present the things so that one another can go back and take a look at it. So that's one of the things that, as it relates to libations, I'm not sure if that would fall under what some are calling, quote, Old Testament libations or Old World libations. That might be something else, and if somebody's more versed in that space, feel free to press 1 and see if you can chime in on the question that Brother Mario has just asked. But as regards to Brother Ron, I believe that Sal said he is here. So we have someone pressing 1. Thank you for that, Brother Mario. Thank you for listening in. I did put the presentation for those who want to see the scriptures in the Debate Talk for You Q&A layer, so feel free to take a look at it, and any questions or comments, feel free to share. Brother Sal, the mic is yours.
All right, let's bring in Ron. Ron Divine, are you there? 678-430. Are you live? Can you hear me?
You said, hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on, man? How you feeling?
Oh, you can hear me? Oh, shalom. Peace and shalom. How you doing, Sal?
Shalom, brother. How you doing?
Okay. Oh, we live. Oh, shalom. How you doing, Emunah? And I think Sister Mayana's on the line as well. Is that correct?
Hey, man, on the line. We doing
Yeah,
well.
shalom. Yeah, peace. This is So I apologize for my tardiness. I was trying to get on, for the entire show, but I'm also doing double duty as far as working as well. So I was only able to hear a few minutes here and there, and then had to get out to go and do work. So I was just trying to, for the most part, get the general consensus of what the discussion was leaning towards in regards to the acceptance or rejection of, what I think was termed by you, Sister Emunah, as being old world libations or Old Testament libations. If somebody can just give me a brief summary for just maybe some of the parts I may miss so that I can respond up to Brother Mariel's question as well.
All right, no problem. Essentially, like I said, I saw you on the YouTube. I saw the video. I asked a series of questions. I told you I would research it. I did, to take a look at whether or not we should be, as you are sharing with the people, whether or not we should be re-implementing or establishing in exile giving of cakes and libations. And so essentially, because I asked what was the best example and was giving Yaakov, we went into the context of the way in which Jacob and the reason in which Jacob offered libations. And I tried to find if I could see outside of Yaakov anyone else, 2 to 3 witnesses. And on the surface, you don't find those 2 to 3 witnesses. And essentially, the next time we see all of the regulations surrounding libations is in the book of Numbers. And so this puts it into the hands of the priest, which then asks the question, if it's in the hands of the priest in a certain space, in a certain time, then how can we, in this space and time, take it back out of their hands and say that we're going to go before they existed? Do you understand what I'm saying? And so we were kind of I was looking at that thought to see whether or not it's the most accurate of interpretations of the text of what we can actually be doing as a people. And lastly, whether or not, because we can do anything. Should we do it is another question. Can we do it? People do whatever they want. But then the question is it going to be accepted? Is it going to be received by the Creator? Or is this something that we're just doing to make our, feel as though it's being accepted? So basically that was the gist of the presentation. The scriptures were shared. So if you have any more questions, feel free. So at the end, the question is asked, is it something that we can do? And based on what I have gathered from the text and shared, it's not something that we can do because it was left on record that this has a specific time, a specific space, and specific people who are supposed to do it so that it can be accepted.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so there's a few ways that I would respond to that. First thing I would say is that the purpose of the video being a demonstration was to showcase to people that if they wanted to re-implement this pre-exilic custom and implement it in a way where it would give it value or some significance in regards to the Creator, how they can go about doing it. The justification for it, it goes a little bit beyond just Yaakov and the priesthood, because we'd have to examine the corpus of the text to see if there's any examples where this was being done by the people at all, right? And this way, once we understand if that is the case, then that gives us a template to build off of. One good example for that is you'll see that libations was a common custom amongst Israel. And this was a custom that was from just the priests. And we see that in several examples, right? If we go to Psalm chapter 16, more specifically verse 4, we see that a libation was being poured out, but the libation was being poured out to other deities. And that's when you see the psalmist says specifically, if you go back and read it, it says, the sorrows of those who have berated for another deity will be multiplied. I shall not pour out their drink offerings of blood, nor will I take their names upon my lips. So we see that there's an association made in regards to pouring out a libation, and they would say of blood because the wine symbolized blood, towards these other deities. Because if I was to pour it out the type of libations that other deities would require would be their actual shedding of blood, and it would be nothing symbolic like pouring wine that the Israelites saw that their forefather Yaakov has done. We also see in the book of Jeremiah where we see that there are Israelites that are pouring libations and they are offering cakes of unleavened bread unto a deity called the Queen of Heaven. It doesn't really give a personal name there, but they are doing something that was already common in their customs. They transitioned that toward doing it to a deity that was not their patron deity or even a matron deity of theirs. And this is why that act towards those deities were being shunned, because these are the things that the people were doing when they were spiritually declining and they were looking to other deities to bring them fortunes, right, or to reward them in certain ways. So this practice of libations was something that was common. If we examine the instances where the priest was doing it, Yaakov was doing it, and where it's mentioned of it being done, and either using it in the sense of being symbolic or literally being done, as we see where the libations were being poured out to the Queen of Heaven and cakes were being offered up to her, where it says that this was being done to a deity, and this is why the Most High had shunned what they were doing, because they were not doing it unto him. So just because they're doing the custom does not automatically justify them as a people if they're doing it the wrong way. So if a person wanted to reinstitute or re-implement that practice and do it the appropriate way as a means of symbolically, showing the Creator, hey, look, symbolically, not just to Yah, but also that person themselves, hey, I'm pouring out this wine or this libation because this is representative of, me having an encounter with Yah, which Yaakov did. And he was consecrating an area in which that act had taken place. And he had, poured his wine and poured his oil to consecrate it. And we see that this was a custom that was, rampant all throughout Canaan. You know what I'm saying? When Yaakov was there, when the Israelites came back, this was a custom that was just something that everybody did in the region. So it wasn't anything that was just unique or specific or exclusive to strictly only the priest, but the offerings that the priests gave or libation that they gave was for specific purposes in regards to doing something on behalf of the people when a sacrifice was given. So we see also the template for a substitute for sacrifices in Psalm 51, as I had expounded upon in the video, which could be pouring out your soul or giving out your soul unto Yah. Just like Israelites will wear fringes. Fringes, again, you don't need fringes in order for you to have a walk with Yah, but people do wear it symbolically as a reminder of why they have them on, what is the purpose of their walk. A communion, and those who believe in the New Testament, when they take communion, they're drinking wine, which is supposed to be symbolized of the pouring out the blood of Yeshua, and they're eating unleavened bread or crackers or whatever they want to substitute with it in regards to eating his flesh. But again, that's figurative, but they're taking in the sacrifice that he has done. Should that continue to keep going, or should that also cease? Because that, again, was a practice they did at a particular time when he was there and he was alive, and then after he passed, there was a custom in certain areas. But if we're going to do away with those type of ritualistic practices, that means there's no need for anybody to do quote-unquote communion. There's no need for anybody to do Passover. Why are we eating the bitter herbs? If it's supposed to remind us of hardship, but there's no need to do it because that custom was for that time when the Israelites was coming out, and it only became symbolic going forward. So if it's only a form of symbolism, then we should do away with any ritualistic practices, and no matter how many times we've seen it in the text, because if somebody's saying that it's not really going to make a difference in regards to whether Yah's going to receive them or not because it's on the heart condition, then we shouldn't do any kind of customs or keep any traditions that have been handed down to us by our ancestors in order for us, for some of us, not for everybody, to get closer with Yah, because these things are a reminder to those who want to engage in it. So it was never said that everybody should do this, but those who research and study and understand this custom, if they want to do it in a righteous fashion towards Yah, these are the steps to take in order to do it. And there was plenty of scriptures. I myself have over 22, in regards to libations, and only maybe about half of them we say we see in the book of Numbers, but we see it elsewhere in the text. Sometimes you may see it as a drink offering. Sometimes you may see it as libation. You'll even see a situation where water was given to King David, and he poured it. He was really hesitant on pouring it out as a libation as well, because of how it was acquired. But again, that sense of libation was being performed outside the duty of the priest. So this was something that is customary in Israel, but the Most High was upset with them because they started pouring into other deities. Just like he said, I'm not accepting any of your feasts and any of your festivals and any of your sacrifices. He rejected all of that. He rejected all of that because everybody was going astray. Does that mean we should just stop doing it because at one point in time when people were spiritually declined that he rejected it? No, he rejected it because they were not doing it with a circumcised heart. They was doing it for just trying to follow the letter of the law and trying to skim past all the other sins that they were committing, and they wanted Yah to blot those sins out simply because they were doing a ritual. Their heart condition wasn't there. Their heart was not circumcised, and they did not allow their ruach to commune with Yah the way that he wanted them to do. So again, this is just one of many customs that our ancestors have done. It was not just exclusive to the priest. Our patriarch has done it, and it was being done in Israel contemporary to why the priests were doing it and why other people were doing it. We saw the highs of it, we saw the lows of it, and it's simply up to the person who's doing the research and says, hey, look, this method will bring me closer to Yah because this custom is a reminder of A, B, and C to me. It's the same way we keep the feast days. It's the same way people keep communion. It's the same way people keep Passover and do the rituals according to Passover as well, or wear fringes. These are all things that are symbolic to remind us of something, appreciation of what Yah has done with our forefathers, and to remind us what he intends to do with us going forward.
Well, thank you for that. I got so many questions, but I know it's late. You said you're at work, so we definitely, Sister Mayana wants to chime in at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and give the mic over to Sister Mayana to hear her feedback on what she's heard from you thus far. Sister Mayana, the mic is yours. Sister Mayana, are you on mute?
Yes, I am on mute, sounding incredibly intelligent all by my onesies. I thanked Brother Divine for taking the time to join the conversation. Torah for that and giving clarity to some of your more salient points in this particular conversation. One of the things that I heard you say, and you repeated it just recently, was the comparison to the fringes and other things that you're terming symbolic. I would take to task the idea that the wearing of the fringes and the wearing of the tassels and the like are symbolic. These are practical. It's a reminder on the outside that we are to see, to be reminded, and to do. So it's not a symbolic thing. It's a practical thing. Just like and the same idea of having something outside so that you can look at and bethink yourself because it's outside of you. We find that same thought in Genesis 2 when the feminine principle is taken outside of the Adam and it becomes neget. It's opposite and in front of and within the visual range of. It's a practical thing. It's not symbolic at all. I would also disagree with haphazardly assigning these tasks. You're saying, the priest did it, or it wasn't always the priest, and it was these other people, and Jacob did it. And the timeline goes that there was this period of time when the ancestors did them, and then that stopped. And then the priesthood regulated it, and it became something that had to go through the priesthood. And when things were not acceptable, it was not acceptable because once the Most High had regulated these things that people wanted to do and participate in and said, listen, don't forget the reason why we get regulated. We get regulated in Leviticus is because we are emulating those round and about us. And I don't want you looking like them. Don't do it the way they do it. If you're doing this thing for me, it looks this way and only this way. And it's not how you feel about it or what you want to do about it. And so I would caution anyone listening here. We also see here that this is where the Most High is instructing us. We're instructed to wear fringes. We're not instructed to pour out libations according to our I don't want to say whims because it sounds so I don't want to say that, but at the point where we feel like it's necessary or according to our desires or according to our expectations, we're never told to do that. We have no instruction to do this thing, which is completely different from the wearing of our fringes. And so I'm curious about drawing those kinds of comparisons, what happens in the Common Era, where the New Testament Messiah is making all of these requests, and these things being allegorical, these things being metaphorical, and those things being symbolic, doesn't run parallel to these practical applications. It's just, from my understanding, and again, seminary has been some decades ago, but this is the parallels that are drawn with the New Testament Messiah have to do with water libations, and even then, there's a very specific body of water. It's not just any body of water. It's not just any bottle of wine. It's not just any bottle of oil. You cannot go to the bodega, to the local Whole Foods. You cannot go to wherever you want to and pull up whatever it is. It's very specific water. It's not Voss. It's not Polish Spring. It's not Deer Park. I believe it was one of the pools that Hezekiah pulls from one of the rivers. I can't recall it offline. I could probably pull it up if I were to Google it right now, but it's very specific bodies of waters. So I don't think that we want to encourage the people to be quite so lackadaisical, quite so whimsical about approaching what we're calling a holy ritual. Rituals are holy. They're sacred. They are consecrated, and they should be not entered into lightly, which is why even in Torah and in the Tanakh, we see that we turn these things over to our priesthood, because the Most High consecrated and put them aside and told them how to do these things. So we rely on those who have been commissioned by the Creator to do the things that we are allowed to do. And just to end, because I don't want to ramble, the two talking points or two things that I would take away from what you're saying is that, one, these other examples that you're giving to the people, there are laws that command us to do them, such as the fringes. We're commanded to do this. Libations we're not commanded to do on our own at all. And the other thing is that they're very specific and highly regulated, even right down to what kinds of things we make oil from, what kinds of things or what types of bodies of water we use. All those things are highly, highly regulated. And I don't think that under the guise of symbolism should we take liberty with those things that have been prescribed. And I would ask, I submit that for consideration both to you and to the listening audience. And with that, I yield.
All right, y'all, thank you for those who have just joined us. We're having a conversation on all rituals righteous. We're looking at, things that are happening in our community, research that's coming forward. We have Brother Divine Prospect with us on the line. For those who may not know, he put forward his research and his understanding. And, when we do these things, we invite one another to investigate. This is what we're supposed to do to make sure, because we're a nation, so we're supposed to be making sure that everyone is on track. If we're wrong, if someone else is wrong, in love, we look at what's going on and we have these discussions. They're hard discussions to have. Sometimes they don't always go smoothly. This one is going smoothly, all praise be to the Most High. And so I want to thank him for calling in. I don't see if we have any callers, but if you would like to respond to what you heard Sister Mayana say, you can feel free to do so. If anybody has any questions, press 1 at this time. We're approaching the 10:30 hour, and we're going to wind down a little bit after this. So, Brother Divine, would you like to respond to anything that you've heard Mayana say?
Yeah, there's some things I would like to respond to, but what I want to do is I want to commend the Sister Mayana for being very astute and very consistent when she takes her time to, analyze things and give her perspective, because it's very thought-provoking, it's very insightful, and this is why it's always good to have women in our cipher, right, because they bring a different angle that a lot of times us as men, we maybe not be able to see, So I want to thank her for her feedback on that. What I would like to share, in regards to what she said there are very specific sources that we need to get these items from, such as wine, such as oil, such as water. If that is true, then that means that it will be very difficult for us to even keep Passover. Most people who partake in Passover, they're eating lamb that's already been broken up. Most people are not going out there and killing the lamb, right? And even there are areas where the, Torah is absent in telling us explicitly how those procedures are to be done. This is why you see halakha being performed, because halakha, what the purpose of halakha is, or you can use it as halakha, is there's nothing explicit in regards to how this should be performed. So the people have to bring together a council of elders to decide, okay, well, since it's not telling us how to properly slice the throat or kill this animal, how should we perform it? Right? So there are areas in the Torah where it's not specific on how certain things are done, but if it is specific and we say, hey, look, it's telling us that we should do exactly A, B, and C. I don't see people, most people holding a staff in their hand and wearing sandals when they're taking Passover. You know what I'm saying? But the explicit regulations that is what's to be done when you perform Passover, right? The wine, are they getting it from the vineyards that's in Israel? Most people, they're unable to get that. So that means that if people are given specific regulations on to do something that is prescribed for us to do, and we're not getting it from the sources or doing it point for point, then that means we're doing it in vain. And I will go even as far to say that we're actually disregarding a direct edict from Yah. Because if he's giving you specific instructions and we're not carrying that out, then that means that we're doing something wrong on our part. So this is why even looking at, the rituals that we do in Pesach or Passover is a ritual, right? And to say, well, this is prescribed for us to do and this is how we should do it. But most people are not even doing it the way. Matter of fact, most people are not even doing it in the land like they are supposed to be doing it. So for us to kind of like segue and rule out, the practice of libation because it has to be done specifically this way, and then it was codified quickly for the priest to only do, and there's scriptures where people were doing it, and then people were doing it wrong, because even the priesthood, the priest went off. This is why the prophets had to be raised up to speak against the priest. Especially if you look in the book of Malachi as well, we see this thing where the priests were being, the Most High had to get on the priests because they were doing things in vain as well. They were bloodthirsty and they were taking bribes. They were doing all sorts of things. So because something is prescribed for the priest to do and the priests are doing it wrong, should we now just, nullify those practices and say, hey, look, you know what? We shouldn't be doing it no more because we're not priests, we're not able to do this, we're not able to do that. I mean, people can argue to even say, well, even today, depending upon your understanding of the text, some people could say, well, today we are priests. Those of us who are awoken, those of us who even in Yahushua, those who subscribe to that, I mean, he has made us a kingdom of priests. Shemot 19:6 says that all of Israel will be priests. And if we are going to be priests in some shape, form, or fashion, and what degree is that priesthood that we're operating in? And if we do perform customs that our forefathers have done, would the Most High frown upon it? Would the Most High say, no, you're doing this libation unto me and I don't want it? I mean, we don't see any instance where the Most High is rejecting a libation that's being done unto him. The only libations that are rejected are libations that are done to other deities that is not him. And we'll see also that not only the people were going off, but the people went off basically because the leadership was going off. So again, nobody, I mean, at least from my perspective, I'm not commanding people to do something. I'm not saying, oh, you need to go and do a libation. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if a person wants to implement it and wants to do so righteously, whether you want to say that, because, I mean, obviously the libation is symbolic. Pouring wine and pouring oil is symbolic, right? Because, the wine hitting the ground and the oil hitting the ground, even if it's on a stone pillar, is symbolic, because that's not really doing anything. It represents something. It's a key that unlocks something that when it's performed, it has meaning, it has value. So, again, we'd have to scrutinize everything that we do to see even if we're doing it specifically. Even if we're talking about the fringes that I mentioned before, the fringes is an ethnic marker, right? It's a reminder because something happened that was circumstance happened, and because of such, the Most High says, I want you to do A, B, and C because this circumstance happened, right? But then we have two scriptures on that. We have Numbers 15 and 38, and then we have Deuteronomy 22 and 12 that goes in about the fringes. And if you read them, the way that they're expressing how fringes should be done, it's different. And when we do a textual analysis and compare, you'll start to see in the language itself that is really telling you to do two different things, because one was situational and one is supposed to be perpetual. So if that's the case, and we only have two instances where the instructions are going out in regards
to fringes, now we're going to be at a standstill. We're going to go, oh, you know what? Hey, when we look at it from the overall context, this is talking about a particular situation, but now when it's given as a code for us to follow, a particular edict from Yah for us to follow, we see that it's only mentioned here, and it should be done this way. So we have nothing else to corroborate with that, such as a second or third witness, then what do we do? Do we stop wearing fringes? What should we do? So again, everything will have to, every practice that we do, every custom that we do will have to come into scrutiny. And even if we perform our feast days, we have to say, well, are we getting this from barley that's growing in the land? Are we getting this from wheat that's growing in the land? Are we getting this from, grapes that are growing on vineyards in Israel? To go that deep with it, I think most people or in our community are not there. And if we were to tell them that you have to do it specifically this way, because if you don't do it, the Yah will not honor it, we're going to throw a lot of people under the bus that make an attempt to try and keep the things that Yah is instructing Israel to keep, because being in captivity is a totally different situation when we were in our sovereignty. So again, the libation element is purely optional if a person wants to perform these ancient periods of customs, and the last thing I'll say, and I'll hand it off because I'm sure, there may be some questions, is that from my perspective on how I approach Scripture and approach the culture that is in Scripture is to look at the migration patterns of those who I connect myself with according to what it is that I'm able to prove. And in doing so, that I've seen that a lot of the ancestors that migrated and made their way over to West Africa, that we then can pinpoint to the oral traditions of the Africans that are there that identify as being Israel, or those who are coming from the northern tribes. And we see that the libation was something that is scriptural, and we see that it's something that follows them, where those ancestors have settled that, and then where we then, our forefathers and foremothers who are direct descendants, then got picked up and brought over here to the Americas, that practice also followed us over here to the Americas. So this is something that we continue to do. We never stop. The only time that it was shunned or rejected was when it was done inappropriately to the wrong deity. So if somebody can show me where Yah turned down a drink offering to him at a certain point in time and saying, no, I will no longer accept a drink offering to me, instead of saying, well, I'm not going to accept your drink offerings because you're doing it to another deity, then that would definitely be a very, very great foundation to start building on to say, well, we shouldn't do it because of that. And if somebody can explicitly, because I brought out Psalms, somebody would have to deal with Psalms, somebody would deal with Scriptures and David, and show that they were still doing these libations outside of the priesthood because it was in their custom. Somebody would have to show me that libation, the way that we can equate it to other customs that we do, should be shunned completely because people are either not doing it appropriately, that it is kodesh, it is set apart, so it's got to be very specific, but then most of us don't specifically follow a lot of the customs that are in Torah. It puts us in a situation where it's like, well, I guess I shouldn't even do most of this stuff because I'm not even sure if I'm doing it right. And I don't think that we want to put people on that path. So it's just optional if a person wants to perform it because it's something that will bring them closer to their relationship with Yah because they understand what it symbolizes, then go ahead and do it. If you feel that you do not want to do it, I'm not laying a burden on you or a commandment saying that, see, the text says you have to do it, so you must do it. That's not my position. So with that, I yield the floor.
Thank you for that. That was the voice of Brother Divine Prospect. It's at the 10:30 hour. You're tuning into a bonus special edition of the Relationship Challenge, where we're having a conversation of whether or not all rituals are righteous. There's a lot that have been said tonight. I would say, Brother Divine, since you didn't have an opportunity to hear the whole presentation, I put the link in the debate talk for you, Q&A layer, with some of the scriptures, and you can basically see the thought processes that I went through. There are explicit spaces within the prophets, especially Ezekiel, where the Creator, and one would say, oh, it's tied to idols, but even before we get to that point in the book of Deuteronomy, the Most High clearly lets us know that, don't do the things the way you see it done here. It's not of your own volition. It's not wherever you want to do it. It's not under any green leafy tree. It's not just because it's Tuesday. I mean, this is actually left on record, and we see the prophet later coming on, giving us the formula. I know it's difficult. It feels like stripping us down to bare bones. It feels like we're not moving, but the reality is, even in Israel's attempt to play return, we're still not doing the things that we're supposed to do. We're still not doing the in-house cleaning. We're still not edifying ourselves. We're still not looking for the healing. And these things, to a degree, are still not accepted because the Most High said that's not necessarily what I asked you for. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes I see, and as you spoke about, and we did have that conversation, I believe, on UTP about Passover, and that is also a controversial space where if you do tell, Israel, we're supposed to rehearse, but if you tell them, like, you're not really keeping Passover, are we ready to really sit down and look at these things for real, for real? You know what I'm saying? Because at this point in time, we're like grasping at straws. Maybe it's this going to get it, and maybe that's going to get it, and maybe this going to get it. But it's clear here that our foreparents, time and time again, have stumbled over things of this nature because we have never truly, as a nation for an extended period of time, commit to serving the true and living power. And we are susceptible to the nations round about us. So it behooves us that anything that comes across the radar, to take a look at it, to examine it, to see whether or not, true to form, are we going to go off again? Because it's easy for us to go off. It's hard for us to stay on, and that's history. And so that's what I would present to the audience, listening audience today, is to do the research, as you said, for yourself. Go into all of the things and the spaces in which, everyone was doing according to their own, what was right in their own eyesight, and see where it led us. The way is narrow. This is understandable, and it may feel like, we're in timeout. We can't do anything we want to do. But the reality is, the Most High is like, when we give back to Him, it's because He blessed us to give back to Him. It's because we've crossed over to the other side from the curses to the blessings, and that His part of the covenant is fulfilled, and He returns us. And then, as He says in the book of Ezekiel, I'll give you the verse. Ezekiel 20 and 39, He begins to tell us that then I'm going to take it from you then. Then I'll accept it from you. And there I require, in His holy mountain, I require my offerings of you because I gave you the capacity to give me back what I asked you for. And so right now, I know we're making efforts to do that which we think is required of us, but the reality is, there's many things that we could be doing that we're not doing. And we would rather try to go for the extra credit than to actually do the work. And so I think Sister Mayana wanted to say something. We're going to go ahead and wind. I think if we have any more callers on the line, I'm going to give it to Sister Mayana. I want to thank Brother Divine for coming in. I'll let you have your last thoughts, brother. Sister Mayana, your mic is yours.
Yeah, I'll make it real brief because I think we may have a caller. If we don't, press 1 because this is a great conversation and it's a rare privilege to have Brother Prospect with us. And the points are excellent. I appreciate your thoughts addressing what I said. I would start with Deuteronomy 23 and 21, which says, when you make a vow to Yahweh, our power, you shall not delay to pay it, for that would be sin in you, and Yahweh, your power, will surely require it of you. So again, this idea that we should get an A for effort is questionable. We go into Ecclesiastes 5 and 5. The Most High says, it's better that you should not vow than you should vow and not pay it. So this idea that we can do this thing in effigy or symbolically and not understand that on the other side of this effort is the expectation of payment. In Jeremiah 7:22, the Creator reminds us, for I did not speak to your fathers or command them in the day that I brought them out of Egypt concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. This was not something that was contingent upon us when the Most High delivered us. So this idea that we're doing this, it comes from somewhere else. It's not. So we bring up Yaakov, we bring up all this, we forget that they are living in spaces where there are other things happening, where they're witnessing other things. I think that it's very notable that you brought out that in these spaces where we look at West Africa and the continent, and we acknowledge that they have oral traditions and have moved unbroken. This is an excellent point, that there's a lot of things that they brought over without having been touched by certain crises that we have experienced and that the Southern Kingdom experiences. But what is also noteworthy that the difference between the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom, if the Northern Kingdom is what we're looking at and saying, oh, look at the Northern Kingdom produced 0 righteous kings, none. absolutely none. So they immediately, from the very first king, run into idolatry. So if this is the pristine example that has been untouched and unchanged, I'm not sure that this is the example that we want to raise for the people and say, oh, look, the Northern Kingdom didn't have these problems. The Northern Kingdoms in certain parts of West Africa have preserved the things that they were involved in. There's absolutely, according to the Tanakh, not one example of a single king from the Northern Kingdom that did what they were supposed to do. And in fact, they became progressively wicked. By the time we get to the seventh king, we have Ahab, who's just like completely off the meter and pulling in women from foreign nations to further the wickedness they've already established among themselves. So I would say that while I say that's a great example, I'm not sure that it's an example that benefits your position. The Northern Kingdom did not follow the will of the Most High. We have at least 8 of the 19 kings in the Southern Kingdom that the Most High says at least they were righteous. But there's 0 in the Northern Kingdom, like not one. So I think that kind of, if you're looking to be addressing the Psalms, Dawid doesn't do everything he's supposed to do all of the time. The fact that we have a king at all was in violation of what the Most High had said for us to do. He said, you have rejected me. He told the Samuel, don't worry about it. They've rejected me. The fact that we have kings is a rejection. So I'm not even sure that we want to talk about what the kings were doing. That's another example of rejecting what the Most High put in front of us. So again, we look at Deuteronomy 23:21, Ecclesiastes 5:5, and Jeremiah 7:22 to see what the Most High did require, what the Most High did not require, and how the Most High feels about us vowing vows, knowing we cannot keep them. As Emunah said, Emunah and I are on record as saying we cannot keep the Passover the way it is prescribed. What we're calling Passover is not Passover. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it shows the consistency of our concerns. With that, I yield.
All right. Y'all are real quiet tonight. That's unusual. Thank everybody for joining us. This is the Relationship Challenge Bonus Special Edition. We're on the line with Brother Divine Prospect having a conversation about rituals and righteousness and whether or not we should be dusting things off and re-implementing them in our current state of being. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to press 1 now. If not, we're going to get closing thoughts and go ahead and wind down for the evening. Brother Sal, do we have any callers on the phone line?
Yes, we do. We got one person that pressed number 1 at this time. Again, family, it's the overtime part of the show, so simply press number 1, and we'll add to the conversation. Also, the email is still open, debatetalkview@gmail.com. That's debatetalk, the number 4, and the letter U @gmail.com. If you have any questions, feel free to email, or if you're already on the phone line, simply press number 1. We're going to the phone lines now. Let's go to 702-202. You're live.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, you're live.
Good evening, everybody. This is Akwete. What is everybody doing?
Hey, Brother
Long
Akwete.
time no again.
Hey, shalom, Rabbi.
What's going on?
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Shalom, Rabbi. Shalom.
My brother Divine, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, King. I'm doing all right. Hope you're doing well.
Awesome. Yes. A bit tired, but I wanted to stay up and listen in. Very good show. Thank you all for your contributions. I just have one question, and anybody can answer it. When we're talking about libation pouring, whether we should do them in our current state or in 2018, are we looking at it from a Western perspective, or are we also looking at it from an African perspective, meaning that the Hebrews in West Africa at the moment, are we looking at it from their worldview, or are we looking at it from the American worldview? Because to make a good judgment, you have to put on the lens from those who are performing this, as Divine will call it, pre-exilic custom. These are customs that we see in the Torah. These are customs that have been performed since we migrated. These are customs that we can trace all the way to the book. So when we're talking about such matters, are we looking at it from 21st century Las Vegas values, or are we looking at it from the lens of a people who have kept these traditions since it was given in the Torah, or we can say since it was given at Mount Sinai? Which view are we looking at it from? And that's my question.
Well,
with that, I would thank you.
Well,
I'll be real brief.
We plainly stated.
Sorry.
No problem. You weren't here from the beginning, so I'll answer that. From the beginning of the show, we plainly stated that we drew parallels from the continent. Even in the last statements, we were also speaking about the continent. Throughout the conversation, we have woven the practices of the continent, and so I will allow the panel to give their feedback, but I wanted to let you know that, yes, the fact is we're not, although it's apparently par for the course for everyone to ask, are we being Western? And I don't know why that's the assumption that every conversation is coming from that lens. But I understand that it's a fair question. So the answer is no, it's not Western. I myself, I'm an anthropologist, so I study cross-culturally, and that's just my methodology from the gate in every conversation that I have. Emunah has also lived on the continent, and so when she brings information, she is not speaking just from having studied, but having lived experience on the continent for some time, as well as in the land. And so we, by default, are constantly speaking cross-culturally and looking at the text from this very textured lens rather than the perhaps expected one world view. I see now that we're running down to, with only 18 minutes, I'll yield. But Brother Rabbi, while we have you, would you like to add whether or not on the continent, from your experience, is this going on by the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, or is this from an elder or someone that is trained in performing libations, or is this done by, the layman, even on the continent? From your experiences, our research and experiences come with something different, but it would be great to hear what your lived experience is, from today, because you're still there. Emunah, I'll yield from here.
Man, I got Shiloh here telling me the time running down. That's a good question, Sister Mayana. Brother Quetta, can you stick up in real quick? I heard Brother Divine Prospect trying to say something, so I'm going to let him say something. I'm going to comment. Hopefully we don't run out of time, and then we'll take it back to you. So stand by. Brother Divine, go ahead. The mic is yours.
Yeah, I'm not going to take long because I definitely want to hear what Rabbi Akwati will say on this. My perspective takes into account wholly and holistically by examining the West African cultures and seeing those who identify as Israel, and looking at their traditional customs and tracing that to, or do a reverse migration back into the land of Israel to see how it lines up. So a lot of my perspective in regards to libations is actually looking at West Africa and seeing those practices and why they be done. If you study the Ga culture or the Ewe people, or even the Igbo people, they all pour libations for various reasons. You know what I'm saying? What our interest is if our ancestors have settled in those regions and these were practices or customs that they brought with them and they had significance behind them, are we actually examining it from that perspective? Because those are the people that we would have the closest shared experience and connections with, as opposed to examining cultures outside of West Africa to see why they're doing it and where they're going wrong, or why they even cease from doing that. What I will say, since my brother Rabbi Akweti is on the line, he has a video on his YouTube channel called Akweti Ama, and he has a video called Ancient Hebrew Customs Libation. Right, so even before I even knew about Rabbi Akweti, these were conclusions that I would come to on my own, and then consult with those of my contemporaries that were in West Africa to help to confirm a lot of the research that I was doing. And then when I actually, saw this brother's work online, I was like, wow, here's somebody else who actually is seeing it from this perspective. So it's not really a wholly isolated thing, So I would say that my perspective on libations takes into account our West African contemporaries who are those left behind from our ancestors who left the continent and doing a reverse migration with those customs back into ancient Israel. With that, I use the floor.
All right, thank you for that. Wow, this conversation got jumping at the end. I would say, as it relates to the question, what perspective am I coming from? The perspective is always Torah. Sister Mayana said something that was very important. If we're speaking about the northern tribes, it behooves us to realize why we are in exile to begin with. That means nothing goes on. It doesn't matter how long we've been doing something. It is our responsibility to determine whether the thing in which we're doing is right in the first place, because apparently something that we were doing was wrong because we're here. So I always, like you say, reverse engineer. I deal a lot with healing. I deal a lot with healing the soul, healing the mind. You see what I'm saying? Researching my own journey. And you have to start where you are. And so one has to say we're in exile. Our foreparents, those who are still on the continent, are still in exile. Those who are in Ethiopia are still in exile. Those who are in the Middle East are still in exile. Okay, boom, all of us is in exile. What's going on? How did we get here? What are the things that they were doing? Just because our foreparents did it did not make it right. I grew up with Caribbean parentage, Caribbean family. What I didn't know was calling libations is what they were doing. When you open a bottle of rum, you pour some in the cap and you throw it out. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't grow up saying, ooh, that's ooky spooky. Somebody get a new piece of land. They want to bless their land. They throw it out. I didn't grow up like, oh, what's this? You know what I'm saying? I didn't grow up like that. However, as you come into Torah and you begin to research and understand, then everything goes under the microscope. Because the reality is, if it's not accepted, we have to seek what was left on record to determine, no matter how long we've been doing it, whether or not what we're doing is going to bring us closer to or farther away from the Creator. So myself personally, it doesn't have anything to do with Western mentality. It has to do with what is right and what is wrong, what is accepted and what is not, and how do I return wholeheartedly to the Creator so that the things that I do offer will be accepted, and so that He will return us to the land that He promised on oath to our forefathers. And that, for me, that's what the conversation is about. That's what the conversation always is about. So I will let, I believe, someone just asked a question. I will let Brother, what was the question, Sister Maya? You just asked a question.
On the continent now, yes. in Rabbi's experience, is this something that's done by any and everyone, or are there designated people who perform libations to the Creator?
Okay, so usually there are people that are trained. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey, Rabbi, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so usually anybody who pours libation has to be trained on the process and the custom and then the ritual. But it depends on who is pouring it. We have different levels. So let's say we have a meeting at home. Usually when we're doing the 8-day circumcision, there's libation that is poured. Almost every major event, sometimes national events, when the pastor comes and prays, you have the high priest of my tribe will come and pour libation, because libation is just prayer. If it translates into our dialect, it just means prayer. So it's done on a national level. It's done in private. It's done during, let's say, 8-day circumcision. So in a setting where, like what Divine did, let's say we're in a setting doing the 8-day circumcision. The elder can get up and say, okay, Akwete, I want you to pour libation. He's given me permission to pour the libation. So, yes, I get up, and then there's a statement that I make to ask permission, and then to recognize the elders that are sitting, and I can go ahead and pour the libation. So, yes, anybody who has been coached on how to do it, usually if you come from a royal family, these are the things that they teach you, because it's something that has been passed on. And then we do pour libation. You can pour privately. You don't need an elder to do that. You can pour libation privately, because it's a form of prayer. When we're going to war in the we pour libation before we go to war. And when you study the ritual and the person is doing the libation act, depending on how they're pouring it, if they're pouring it towards them or away from them, it tells you what it signifies. So these are customs that, yes, it's taught. Everybody will be taught. Anybody who's interested will be taught. But if you come from a certain family, a certain lineage, you have to learn these things because it's something that is passed on. So to answer your question, yes and no. It's not everybody who can do it in a public setting where elders and kings are sitting and queen mothers are sitting. But if you're called upon and you're given permission as a child to pour libation, yes, that is done most of the time. You can do it privately, do at home. And it's some people do that to usher in the Shabbat every Friday, sundown, or whenever they keep the Shabbat. One of the practices that some people do is to pour libation to usher in the Shabbat. So it's something pretty common. That's what I was asking, which lens are we looking at it from? Because from our lens, it's a form of prayer. That's all it means. When you translate libation to my dialect, is to the Ashanti is mpaibo. And then when you translate it to my dialect, it's the same thing. It is prayer. You can use water. You can use alcoholic beverage.
All right. You have heard it. We are at the closing mark right now for this conversation. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in. Thank Brother Kwete for coming on, Brother Divine Prophet for taking the time, Sister Mayana, Brother South for allowing us to have this conversation. If you have any questions or comments and you missed the live stream of this conversation, put them respectfully under the video and we will get back to you. So once again, if all has been said for this evening, I want to say everybody Lila Tov, have a good night.